Hey, Trailblazers, this is Jason, your host of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. Before we jump into our latest episode, I've got some incredible news for you. Are you gearing up for your next big hike or backpacking trip? Well, we at Trailblazing Texas podcast have partnered up with Trekker Joe's, the ultimate Texas outfitter, to bring you something I feel absolutely special. Listeners, you of the Trailblazing Texas podcast can now get a one-time 15% off their gear purchases at Trekker Joe's. That's right, whether you're a first-time customer at Trekker Joe's or a repeat customer like me, you can save big and hit the trails well prepared. So upon checkout, use code TTP15 to claim your 15% discount and in the process support an amazing local Texas business. So happy trails, and don't forget to tell your hiking buddies. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and I am really excited about this next episode and our next guest. Really, this is the reason why I wanted to get into podcasting. It's getting to know our Texas hiking community and really just show that there's no excuses, there's no reasons why we can't get outdoors. Robin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
So, kind of the point, as I've gotten to know you and really seen, you slaying the trails, it was like, yes, I have to have you on the podcast. It's from the aspect of, I hear a lot in our community, and I think, it's gotten a lot better that, women can't hike or backpack, or women can't go on solo trips, and yes, I'm not delusional that there's sure safety aspects. Anybody who steps on the trail, there's absolutely safety aspects that we need to consider. But also, I think having you on the podcast, talking about your adventures and just you as a hiker and a backpacker, absolutely will motivate and really just let people know that, man, you can do this. So again, I know you're busy, mom, wife, and all the other stuff, but I am greatly appreciative for, you taking a couple hours out of your day and coming on the podcast.
Happy to do it.
So we're just going to dive right in. So this first part of all the podcasts, I really enjoy because it's really just to get to know you and the guests, their kind of background to their hiking journey. So what led you to start hiking and backpacking?
So yeah, I've always been outdoors, grew up camping and all of that. And then when I met my husband, he was a rock climber, all the things outdoors, camping. So I started doing that stuff with him. And then in like 2014 or 15, I really got into OCRs and obstacle course racing, mud racing, and I did several of those. And then I also was getting into some little sprint distance triathlons. And then in 2020, when the world shut down, all of that stopped. I was doing several of those per year, so I was like, I need to get out of this house. And there has to be something. And I think I was just scrolling one day and came across, I don't even remember, I think it was a woman. She was backpacking, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I mentioned to my husband, Joe, that I was interested in trying it. And so we kind of just took off from there. And then we went to Los Maples here in Texas. That was our first little backpacking experience. And we took our little boy with us. That was 4 years ago, so he would have been 8. And we all had on, like, I don't even know, 50, 40-pound bags. Like,
Uh,
way,
so would you consider that kind of your first real hiking, backpacking experience, that trip?
yes, I have gone. I mean, I did little, hike around wherever you're camping at or whatnot, but nothing with like a full backpack going out into the wilderness and having everything for survival on you. So yeah, that was our first experience.
What are what do you remember most about that trip? Outside of the
Oh,
heavy backpacks.
heavy backpack. We had so much stuff, but we had gone over Thanksgiving. And so it was really fun to just do something different and non-traditional for Thanksgiving. Like we had our Thanksgiving dinner that night, and it was like, if I remember correctly, it was Knorr cheese and broccoli rice that we added sausage to. So that was like our Thanksgiving meal. But it was fun just to be the three of us out in the wilderness that we had made it up that steep climb to our campsite and just was there in nature and enjoying something different.
So was that at the west part of the park,
Mhm.
campsite H? It's not an easy hike.
And actually, when we were in the parking lot putting on all of our like heavy packs and we had all the stuff strapped to us, even our 8-year-old had on probably a 25 to 40-pound pack, poor guy. But a park ranger had came through and she's like, "Oh, what campsite are y'all staying at?" We told her, she's like, "Oh, good luck." So
That was Lori, my wife. That was our first backpacking trip, and to
really,
campsite H. We've done it twice. Man, that climb up to the very end, it's not a joke. It's not a joke at all. So, if you kind of look back where you're at now, all your adventures, and we'll get into, I think, some of the ones that are important to me for sure. What would you consider your very first like significant hike or backpacking trip?
my very first significant one that like I was most proud of was Lone Star. I had gone and done the Little Lake Creek Loop, and I just stayed one night on trail, but that was like really empowering for me to just know that I could do it by myself. So I think that was most important.
To the listeners, when you step on the Lone Star hiking trail and it's at night,
Yeah, it's spooky. Even during the day, it's a little creepy.
you
I've
have hogs, ticks, even like I think there's some Bigfoot lore that, there's some websites that kind of get a little crazy, but it's not definitely for the faint of heart. So it was you just had an overnight there. So how many miles was it on your first trip?
I think it was about 21.
For your first trip?
Yeah,
So
I
was
don't
your
go. I don't like go big or go home. Like training, schmaining, like
that's
just do it.
yes. And so did you still have the heavy pack, or did you by that time you kind of learned like maybe I don't need all this stuff?
Yeah, it was still kind of heavy, but way less heavy.
Yeah.
This was so 2020 Thanksgiving 2020 was the first like heavy pack, and then Joe and I had gone to LSHT in December of 2020, and then in like March of 21 is when I went and did the solo loop. So I had learned a little bit, to lessen, but we still weren't into the ultralight gear by then.
So when you were ending your hike or the backpacking trip and you saw your car in the parking lot, how did you feel?
Elated. I was like, yes, there's my car, and I made it. Proud of myself, but like super tired, just worn out, but in a good way.
So as a strong woman hiker, when you first started, did you have any mentors or role models that I don't know, that maybe inspired you that, man, like they can do it, I can do it, anything like that?
No, no. When I want to do something, I pretty much just go for it. I'll do a little bit of research or whatnot, but yeah, normally I'm just like a go all in. I can do this. yeah, I can do this.
It's funny a second ago when you were talking about, you know, not training, but like, preparing and stuff. I'm like that too. I just go do it. Like,
Even with my like when I was doing OCRs and the triathlons, I'm like, I mean, I'll ride my bike for a little bit, but usually I'm just like, I just go for it, and I'm not in it like those races. I wasn't in it to win it. I'm in it to beat myself, and like it's all about like my perseverance, and it's not really a competition of other people with me.
totally agree. So, how do you see over the years how your hiking and backpacking style has evolved?
So definitely learned how to lighten the load and what comforts I like and don't like, and then just trying out like different terrains, different hikes in other places, getting out to different states, and yeah, just trying out new geological areas.
So, what do you think has been your most difficult or most challenging hike or backpacking trip?
Uh, Most recently, I tried the Centennial Trail. So that was pretty challenging.
Yeah. What was we'll get into that, but what like right off the top of your head, what was the most challenging aspect of it?
The ups and downs, back to back up and downs, was pretty challenging, and it was a lot different terrain than I'm used to hiking on.
So I got a quick question. For the last two episodes, it's been kind of a lot about the Lone Star Hiking Trail, and we were just talking about that. Is it a through hike if you skip the road walks?
I knew you were going to ask me this. So, um, I I try to be a purist, and you know, it's the whole trail. But when I through hiked the LSHT, I through hiked it with a friend, and we got to the last, I think 11 or 10 or 11 miles we had left to go. And the trail was very overgrown at that time, and we were bushwhacking and bushwhacking and bushwhacking. And we had said when we started, like, we're doing this for fun. If it's not fun anymore, we're done. And we had already had several trials and tribulations on this trail. Um, and then when we got to that last part, and it was just bushwhacking, you know, step by step, going through the thorns and things like that. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not having fun. And in hindsight, she was in her mind saying, I'm not having fun, but neither one of us were telling the other. And so after a little while, we both were like, we looked at each other and we're like, are you having fun? Are you having fun? No. We're like, I think we're done. And it was really hot that day too, and it was just not fun anymore. And so we decided to turn around and head back. But we got the total mileage. We just didn't finish the extra mileage at the end of the trail. So Joe, my husband, was giving me a hard time. He's like, it's not a through hike. You didn't finish. So,
That, and if you skip the road walks, it's not a
yeah,
through hike. So we
it's not.
are aligned. So I know for me, like life gets in the way, and it's really important for me. Like I'm on the Lone Star Hiking Trail. First off, just because of the proximity to where I live, on every Sunday almost from September to May. Again, like life kind of gets in the way. So how do you still get that fix that probably we all need, being outdoors with all your other commitments, being a mom, being a wife, all that stuff. So how do you balance all that?
It's hard, but we usually schedule a couple of camping trips during the year. We do have trails out near us because we live in the hill country, so there are trails out near us in Parkville. I try to get out and hike those as often as I can. And then we have like a little neighborhood wilderness trail in our neighborhood that we'll do. I need to do it more often, but we have that available to us. And then, yeah, just trying to get out as often as I can, wherever I can. And then I make sure that I get some actual backpacking trips in at least once or twice a year. which I wish it
No,
was more, but, and I try to make them significant mileage so that I feel like it's worth the time.
no.
So when I
And I
can
know,
take it.
yeah, and I like for me, it's like having a schedule really helps. We're now empty nesters. Hallelujah. All them bloodsuckers are out of the house. Um, but like even when we, the kids were here, just having a schedule for me really helped. And like you said, planning ahead of time. So, if you get together and get that stuff planned out or having a schedule, in my opinion, then you will never have the cases where, there's excuses. Oh, I can't, life is, I'm too busy. I
Yeah.
can't make time for me or for the family to get outdoors. So
It's so important to prioritize that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like everything, being a
Sure.
parent and your own self-care.
Yes. A lot of women let that go to the wayside because we are taking care of our households, our families. So self care is not, first priority to most women.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of going along with that, what keeps you motivated to get outdoors?
My mental health mostly. I have two, not to knock my son and my husband, but they are both ADD and ADHD. And so as a caretaker, it's a lot of mental stress on me. And I love them to death, but yeah, they're hard to take care of. And so, on top of what I have to take care of, then I have to keep, the reminders going and all of that stuff. So it's just really important for me and my mental health. Like, I need a break. I have to get out of here. And so, yeah, that's when I usually plan my little solos because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to get away from here for a minute.
Absolutely. And the same thing in my household, like Lori is the foundation. Like, I mean, without her, we would be kids wouldn't be in college. They probably wouldn't have graduated.
Hey,
You know,
Lori.
yeah, everything that comes with that. So, as we start to kind of move the focus to just really about Texas, like, what are some of your favorite hiking spots, backpacking spots in Texas?
In Texas, I really enjoyed Lost Maples. It's so beautiful in the fall. And let's see, I've done, oh, let's see, uh, the Guadalupe Peak was really fun and really challenging for me, but I liked it a lot. And that's one of the ones I did get to do with Joe. So that made it more special to do that and just summit that peak. It was really cool.
So this is an extra question, and it will dictate how much longer we go on the podcast. What is your favorite national park in Texas?
Oh, my favorite
Start.
national. Oh, well, I'd have to say Guadalupe Peak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna finish out the episode. Yeah, that's my heaven on earth. That is my absolute very favorite national parks, favorite place in Texas for sure. And you mentioned Yellowstone and you've done some hikes in other states. How would you compare hiking and backpacking in Texas, and how does that differ than what you've experienced in some of these other states?
Yeah, so Texas is, we only have that season of probably, I like October to like April, early May, just because of the heat. It's so hot here. And water carries. I think with our heat and our dry, it's so much different to hike here in Texas than in any other state where you have, you know, water in the creeks and rivers, and so you filter much more easily, so you don't have to cache or carry as much. And so that's the main difference for me.
And it's funny you say that because I always hear from one of my good friends in Washington, it's how focused we are as Texas hikers and backpackers on the water carry.
Yeah,
Food carry and this and that is a second to the water. And
well, the
he
water
was
adds so much weight.
absolutely, what is it, like 8 or 9 pounds per gallon or something like that?
your base weight down to 11 or 12 pounds, and then, oh, I'm good. And then you got to add that water. You're up to, 30 by that time.
Yeah, the trip that I just had to the Guads, and it was just here in October a couple of weeks ago. We did a multi-night in the backcountry, and I think I was carrying 5 liters. I should have had 7 liters, but like I calculated it to the ounce, and I actually ended up thinking that I had more, that I didn't consume as much as I thought I did. And I'm like, oh, I have a whole liter actually. And I started chugging that liter, and I shouldn't have. So when we got to the second night, we got to Bush campsite, or on the way, actually, I was like, I had like maybe a quarter of a liter left. And I was like, Henning, I need some water. And so he carried like 9 liters, and he's like, oh yeah, man, I got you. So we get to campsite. So my panic kind of just, okay, I'm going to be okay. So we get to campsite, and I just finished that quarter or half a liter that I had. And, we're at campsite, and I'm just waiting for him to give me that extra liter. And I think he just purposely, didn't give it to me because he just wanted to see me like panic, suffer. And then finally, we were going to cowboy camp. So we're setting that stuff up, and I'm like, dude, are you ever going to give me that liter or not? And he's like, oh yeah, here, sorry. But yeah, it's, that is something, and it's got to happen like in Arizona, I would think, where there is a season to probably you don't hike a lot in, but you could actually die. I mean, people die in these national parks, state park, Palo Duro, Big Bend, Guadalupe, due to the heat and not having enough water.
So dangerous not to be prepared.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just inexperience or just rolling the dice, but that's definitely something that you shouldn't play around with. My friend John up in Washington, they just tried the Wonderland Trail, and so that's the trail that goes around Mount Rainier. It's like almost 100 miles and about 22,000 feet of elevation gain.
Wow.
And because of all my water carry and stuff, he was just going to take a life straw and not carry any water and see if he could do it. And so they did it about 75% of the way, and then their feet were trashed, because it was still snow. So in July, a lot of the roads are still closed, due to snow and stuff, and their feet just got trashed. And he's a photographer, so he had tons of photography equipment, and so they had to pull out. But yeah, I mean, he made it almost all the way around with just a life straw. Yeah, that was pretty spectacular for sure.
That's pretty special to just have a life straw.
So what do you consider some of the unique challenges when you think about hiking and backpacking in Texas?
Again, depending on where you're hiking, just the terrain, water, and heat. Just making sure that you're ready for the heat and no water. And then also, sometimes the weather can just turn on a dime here. We have 4 seasons in one day. So just being sure that you're prepared for anything and everything when you're on trail here.
And I think like also on John's episode, we just had an episode about what it means to hike in Washington, because a lot of times when I go to Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Washington, I run into a lot of hikers from Texas. And so I was like, oh, that'd be kind of a cool episode to talk about what it means to go to these locations, and safety aspect, and elevation, and whatever kind of makes up that environment. And he was talking, he goes, when you go on the Lone Star Hiking Trail, one of your concerns is rattlesnakes, poisonous snakes, copperheads, water moccasins. He goes, I don't have that in Washington. Yeah, so the wildlife aspect is something that I think that that offers, challenges to us.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't think about that just now, but yes, I've come across many snakes,
Mm-hmm.
and they're hard.
Yep.
Some of them are camouflage. So you have to be really careful where you're stepping. Be very mindful.
Like he has to worry about black bear and mountain lion, which we don't have. Maybe Big Bend, you would have that. Guadalupe, I always see mountain lion tracks. And this last trip, we were in the Tejas Canyon, and I heard a black bear. It was down in the canyon, probably about, I'm not even going to guess. It was far away, but you just kept hearing a whoof, whoof. And it was probably about, for 10 minutes, about every 30 seconds, and so seen lots of prints, never the actual animals, but yeah, I think, like for John to come here and hike, it would definitely be some, a consideration that's probably not unique to Texas, but for him would be something that he would need to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have, like I said, I've come across snakes in Texas, armadillo. In an armadillo at night, when you're alone in your tent and they're rooting around, it sounds like a full-grown man walking through the woods. So it can get pretty spooky.
That just happened to me. We were just last weekend. We were at South Llano River State Park. So I was invited with the Texas Hiking YouTuber group. Even though I have a YouTube channel that the podcast outputs to, I don't log into YouTube, mess around with YouTube. It's really just the podcast. But I went out there, and sure enough, man, it was probably 2-3 in the morning, and stupid armadillo, when it woke me up, it was almost like, you seen those ghost movies where like the ghost just kind of floats. Mm-hmm. There was no stepping. It was just like some animal was by my head, just floating by. And like just rustling through the stuff, but it wasn't like, a deer step or whatever. Yeah. Just like it was just floating through this brush, and it was going pretty quick. And like, I just yelled at it, "Get away!"
Yeah, I've woken up to a armadillo. I was on the Lone Star, and I was with my friend at that time, and she was camped a little bit further away from me, and she heard it, and she was like, "Robin, what is that?" And I was like, "It's just an armadillo. It's okay." But yeah, they can get really scary sounding. And then I had my vegetable open, so I just had my screen, and that little sucker was like pretty much looking me in the face.
Oh man. I think the reason why it scared me so much is, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours before that, we were setting up camp in the primitive area of South Llano River State Park, and the very last tent, there was a lady. It was her, her tent was the very last tent before you kind of got into the wilderness. Mm-hmm. She's setting up tent, and this guy yells at her and says, "Hey, I need help. I'm naked, I'm high, and I have a gun."
Oh my goodness.
And she's like, What? And he's like, I don't remember where I put my clothes and my gun.
My.
So he had went out there, had a dog. I think the dog alerted him that we were, there talking, setting up camp. And so he had misplaced anyway, so he took a whole bag of gummies. And there's a whole lot more of the story that I won't get into. We kind of determined there was a reason why he was out there. And so he had a whole baggie of gummies. He had got so high that he forgot where he placed his clothes, and in his clothes there was a gun. With that being said, he was very respectful. Like, he was crouched down, covered himself, and talked to people that were there, confronting him. We were able to call 911 to get him some help. So they were there within about 45 minutes. One of the backpackers that were with us gave him a pair of like leggings to put on. But yeah, so then you have all that, and you don't know, like, okay, is he alone? Is he,
Yeah, it's just like a
what's
boy.
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the game warden, park rangers, and sheriff came out, it took them probably another 30 minutes when they had put him in the car to actually find his stuff, and it was probably about 20 yards from him. Um,
Yeah.
so after all that, then all of a sudden this thing is running past your tent, and you're like,
Yeah.
all right, what's going on? So outside of the armadillo, is there any other wildlife experiences that you can share with our listeners?
Uh, yeah. So again on the Lone Star, when my friend and I were through hiking, but didn't, as our terminology, didn't complete through hiking.
Mm-hmm.
We had cached food and some water, and we had used the like Home Depot paint buckets, and I had taped them all the way around the lid with duct tape, not just across the tops, but like all the way around, 3, 4 times. And so we cached those, and I think we were on like day 5, and we came up on our cache, and it was like we're walking up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, our food is all over the ground.
Are you
These
kidding?
yeah, these stinking raccoons had somehow worked their way into that tape and popped the lid just enough to where they could get their little paws inside of there and taken all of our food out. So we were just laughing, crying because we're like, now what do we do? Because we have like 2, 3 more days on trail. And so we started going through everything and figuring out what we could salvage. And anything with, bite marks or claw marks in it was in the trash. But so we
Oh
sat
my
there and we're like, well,
gosh.
like, how in the world did they get into this, first of all? Because, yeah, it was super taped up. But yeah, they found it and they had their little feast that night.
So I don't know if you listened to the podcast that dropped last night. There's a gentleman, Adam. He's been part of the Lone Star Hiking Trail Club Facebook page for as long as that I've been a part of it. He started a business where it's called Old Raven Outdoor Equipage, and
Hmm.
so he goes out and caches for you.
That is an
So you get
awesome
him,
idea.
and he has these cases.
Or like a lockbox or something. I saw him promoting on the page on the Lone Star page.
Yeah.
That is
So
so cool.
yeah, so I'm thinking next time I through hike, I'm gonna hit him up because I'm not drinking any water out there, and I don't want to carry, all the food.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, like it's fire ant, wet or resistant. So I think that's might be the way to go. And so you're
Yeah,
almost guaranteed that you're not going to run into uh, that
raccoons
type
eating
of.
your food.
So how did that impact y'all's plans? I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no resupply around. There's no 7-Eleven.
So yeah, so we sat there just like I said, literally crying, laughing. We had tears. We were like, "What the heck do we do?" And so we, like I said, salvaged as much as we possibly could. So we're like, "Okay, I have this, you have this. We could put it together. Probably get through another day." I said, "Maybe we'll." And there's the like mailboxes along the way in some of the camps. I was like, maybe we'll find some. Maybe we'll find some trail magic. And so we just kept going. Like, I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do, but we had lots of God hugs along that way because we ended up, the next stop we had was the church where you can get water. So
Evergreen
there,
Baptist.
yes, Evergreen Baptist. And there was 2 women that had stopped and had their break that were going the opposite direction of us. And they were only doing a weekend. And they were like, we told them like what our experience was, and they were like, we have extra. So they gave us a little extra
Oh,
because they were
nice.
trail that day. And so they had overpacked. So they gave us a few things. And then when we got to the next primitive camp, there was things in the mailbox. So, and then I think, let's see, yeah, there was a couple things in the mailbox. And then when we got to, I think it's Huntsville, the campground there, we were walking through and we were trying to find the primitive campground, and we got turned around and we couldn't find it. So we're like, well, we'll just camp in the park. Well, unbeknownst to us, we didn't know we had to reserve it online because we had brought cash. And yeah, they're like, and then we ran into the camp host and they're like, yeah, no, you have to reserve it online. We can't take your cash. Okay, so we're like, and by this time we had hiked about 15 miles and we were just like exhausted, tired, like the whole raccoon thing, like emotions. My girlfriend was like, I'm done. She was like over it. And so she was about to call her husband to like come and get her, or the Charlotte was also helping us out. She's like, maybe we should just stop. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. And so we're standing there at the coast and trying to figure it out. And they were so gracious. And they're like, you know what? Come put up your tent in our site. And so we did, and we ended up cramming into one tent that night, and it was super cold. They fed us a meal.
Oh,
They
man.
brought us coffee in the morning and hot chocolate. They were the sweetest couple. And so, yeah, we just were provided for. Even though the raccoons took it all, we were still provided for the rest of our trip. So.
Yeah, and that's what I don't think, and I've never, maybe the climbing community, you could say, but like our hiking community is awesome.
It's amazing.
I can't ever think of a story of hearing where other hikers didn't come through for other hikers,
Yeah,
like,
too bad.
yeah, like it's just a wonderful community. So I'm a new hiker backpacker. What are some of the most important tips that you think could be able to give me to just facilitate me, maybe breaking into this hobby that we love, or actually way of life, be successful, enjoy it, because you do see some people that have, like like your first backpacking trip, you're carrying 1,000 pounds and you're probably going, this isn't fun. I don't enjoy this. So what are some of the tips and tricks that you would recommend, really just to facilitate someone, maybe being more successful, but not in a point like reaching goals and stuff, but just enjoying what we love?
Yeah. Number one, always tell somebody where you're going. Always give someone your itinerary. You don't want to be out there and something happen and somebody not know where you are. Another thing I like to do is have a paper map as a backup to my whatever app I'm using, because you never know, when your phone will die or if you lose your phone or you don't have service. So just always having a backup. I like to also study the route before I'm going, so I kind of know like where landmarks are, how I like to plan out my mileage. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want it to, but I kind of always have like at least some sort of a rough plan of, okay, at night one, I'm going to be here. Night two, I might be here. And then always let my spouse know, like, these are the plans. And a lot of the times he plans things out with me. So he's aware of my whole trip. But yeah, those are definitely the two things I would say top priority of just safety issues.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know that you could have a more perfect answer, because like everything that you said, there's no cost. There's no,
Right.
I don't need a Garmin
Nope.
to tell someone where I'm going to be. And to kind of go along with that, if you have an itinerary, stick to it. Don't change it. And
Yeah.
I don't mean you can't change it, but what I mean is, if you want to change it, the person that you've given the itinerary to, don't act on the new itinerary until they confirm that, yeah, I got your new itinerary. You know, like, and I've used this example a few times. I've driven out to Trailhead 6. It was a complete lake. And so I texted Lori, I'm like, look, I'm going to go try to see what Trailhead 9 is looking like. Same mileage. I'll be back probably, about 45 minutes later, just because I got to drive. And she never responded to the text. So I just went home.
Not worth the risk of someone not knowing where you are.
Absolutely. And then the paper map, studying the map. On the Lone Star Hiking Trail, like, you step on the trail, let's say you get bit by a snake, you should have the map. You should.
And also be aware of what mile marker you're at, so that, you can call for help and be like, I'm here. Especially if you don't have that emergency locator where you can just push that SOS button.
Yeah, and you're familiar with the map, so I'm going to be crossing first Forest Service Road 7543, and then the next one, and then the next one. Your phone, you could drop it into the water.
Fall out of your backpack, or some people keep it in the pocket or whatever. So.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you nailed those, and all that costs you is just a little extra time to spend. Spend a few minutes, print out a map, spend a few minutes understanding what you're going to be hiking that day, bell out points, and then just let someone know where you're at. Yep. Because whether it's a neighborhood hike, whether it's some of the crazy stuff that you've done, these are just, I think, fundamental practices that you want to make a habit, because, definitely save your life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So out of all your hiking in Texas, have you found any hidden gems that you would recommend? So we talked about Lost Maples. That absolutely, I don't know if it's a hidden gem because it's pretty popular. Any other locations or areas that mean a lot to you, or that you find, beautiful?
The Goodwater Loop, I don't know if that's a hidden gem, but it's a pretty nice little loop. It's around Lake Georgetown. So it's a lot different terrain than like the Lone Star, for instance. It's, Lone Star is pretty flat and soft ground, where the Goodwater is pretty rocky all the way around, and a little more, I wouldn't say too much more hilly, but you do get a little bit more elevation on it. And there's some really nice lake views. There was a overhang that was a little waterfall, but it has fallen down, I think, in the last couple of years. So.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that's a nice little hike.
All right. And so, kind of wrapping up this part of the episode, and it really doesn't have to pertain to hikers and backpackers, but what do you think is the best way where we can get involved in any kind of conservation efforts for our Texas trails?
Yeah, anytime. So let's see. Anytime I'm out, I pick up trash. I carry an extra trash bag with me, and I pick up trash anytime I see it and haul it out. There's also national cleanup days for the rivers and parks that you can join in on. You can find those on, the park pages. They'll announce those that you can take part in. And it's just walking around the park, or, going with a ranger, and they walk you down the river and y'all just pick up trash. And another thing is we donate to some of the projects around here that are trying to conserve the water sources in Texas, because, as you know, they're dwindling. And so Great Projects is one that we contribute to.
Okay. And, the nice thing about that is you don't need to be a hiker or a backpacker.
Do that.
You just need to have some cell service or internet and Google, your local state park and some of the activities that it has. And yeah, I'm like you. I carry, well, not all the time, but I try to carry a trash bag with me. They're in my car. So every hiking trip, I don't remember what trailhead it was. It was 9, Trailhead 9. I picked up so much trash that it wouldn't fit in the back of my Outback.
Oh my goodness.
And the
That's just
majority, yeah, and the
odd.
majority of the trash was right around the outskirts of the trailhead.
Ugh. It's
Yeah, I
just
had to
sickening.
drop one of the seats. Yeah, absolutely.
Do better, people. Keep our earth clean.
You know,
We can't
I don't.
easily trash them, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't remember who was on the podcast, and we were talking about, like leave no trace and picking up trash and stuff. And they were saying like what really irritates them the most is the people that bring their dogs on the trail. The dog uses the restroom. They pick it up, bag it, and then they just leave it at the trail. Yeah,
Why go through the effort if you're not going to take it with you?
exactly. So since we talked a lot about the Lone Star Hiking Trail, that's kind of the first trail specific, one of the trips that you've done, and I know you've been on it a few times, that I want to talk about. So just can you let the listeners know, like, talk um, about the Lone Star Hiking Trail and actually and your thoughts on the trail?
Yeah, so I love the trail because it has so much diversity in its um, not just terrain, but like the trees, the flowers. There's so you can be in Jurassic Park 1 minute and then the piney woods the next minute, and
Yeah,
then you can see these big, giant, beautiful magnolia trees. So it's just like you're stepping into all these different little worlds, I guess. In each section of the trail. That's one thing I really love about it. Um, the flora, the fauna. I'm very into like seeing the little things. So like all the mushrooms and different trees, and I get really into like the patterns of nature, and you get to see a lot of that on the Lone Star. Like I said, I love that trail. It's easy to get to. It's very well marked, which I like a lot because I'm not one that's, especially being a female, if I am solo, I'm not going to go bushwhacking. Like I want to have a super well marked trail. Even if I have a map, I still want to know where I'm at all times, and it's just easy to follow that trail, and it's maintained well. It's another shout out to the maintenance, the trail maintenance group. They're awesome to keep that trail easy to hike, and anybody can go do it. I mean, if you've never
yeah,
been on a trail before, that is one that you can step on, and it's easy to do.
yeah, and also like you don't need a reservation.
No.
And what I really enjoy about the trail, outside of everything that you described, because you're absolutely right, the it's 96.4 miles, 128 miles with all the loops.
Yeah.
It consists of the 15 trailheads, so you can really customize anything that you want to do. You can
Yeah.
through hike it, you can yo-yo it, you can uh, just an overnighter. You can have 2 or 3 nights on the trail. And guess what? You don't need to make a reservation.
Nope, you don't. You just
And, I hear that a lot about the state parks and national parks. After COVID, people started, during COVID, people started getting outside because everything was closed down. And now everything is just completely booked and
book.
packed. And
You have to
so,
reserve months. Yeah, months at a time, which sometimes
yeah.
can make that difficult because it doesn't work out with the time that you have off to go. And so you kind of have to then refigure everything with, oh, well, they have an opening here. So then you have to change your plans to match that up, which can be frustrating.
No, absolutely. And so this will be an interesting question for you, being that you're out of town. So like I would probably answer this a little bit different because it's like 52 minutes from my house. So how would you recommend someone preparing to go hike on the Lone Star Hiking Trail?
How many nights they want to spend on it too. If
Yeah,
you're going to
so
hike it or if you're just going to do.
so I guess for you coming out of town, let's just talk about just, maybe a little bit more than an overnight, but not a through hike.
Yeah, so let's see. I would make sure that once again somebody knew where I was going. I would plan out what trailhead I wanted to start at and finish at. Um, am I going to take two vehicles? If I'm having a partner, are we going to take two vehicles or park one, take one vehicle and park somewhere that and get a trail angel to pick us up, drop us off? That's real, because that's really easy to do on the Lone Star too. There's so many trail angels that will help get you to a trailhead or back. So, and then just making sure that you have enough food, enough water, um, or knowing where you can get water or filter from. Which the filtering I think is getting a little less easy to do
You
on the
better
Lone Star.
you better pre-filter and then filter and then boil and then
So yeah, again, just that water aspect. Um,
yeah, and I think and for me the very first thing is get connected into the club, get
oh yeah,
connected
that's
into
great.
the Facebook page because any question that you could possibly have is there. Everybody that's involved in the club, um, very helpful. All the
Very helpful.
maps to the all the maps to the trail are right there, and so on Facebook it's just Lone Star Hiking Trail page, and then I don't remember the URL for the website, but you can Google Lone Star Hiking
Yeah.
Trail and pull it up. Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, definitely get connected to these groups because it's absolutely a wealth of knowledge for sure. So,
Yeah.
how many times have you tried to through hike it?
Twice.
How many
Huh?
times were you successful through hiking it?
Well, by our terminology of completing the whole thing, zero.
So, is that still in your bucket list?
Yes, I will. Yes, I'm going to go back and do the whole thing from start to finish at some point. But the first time I tried to hike it, I had two girlfriends with me, and it was March of 22, I believe. And I think we were on trail for about 3 days. And the weather, the first day was like super hot. The next day was perfect. And then the third day we were at Bath Road, and that we had camped basically at the trailhead before you get there. Yeah, at Bath Road Trailhead, and where it meets the service road.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we were looking at the weather the night before, and it's like, oh, tomorrow's going to be a little bit of thunderstorms, but there'll be sporadic, and it was going to be colder. And we're like, okay, we should be fine. We all had rain gear. We were prepared. So we got up at like 5 that morning. Um, some of us piddled around until about
Mm-hmm.
6, and then we got going. And I tell you, probably within 10 minutes of walking down that road, it just started pouring. And it poured and it poured and it poured. And we hiked, I think I think it's about 6 miles from there to when you come out of the woods and you have to cross that low water crossing.
Oh, that
And,
dam and that by that
yes,
neighborhood.
yeah, in the neighborhood. And there's the house on the corner that I believe he gives water to sometimes. But so we came out of those woods, and they looked at me and I looked at them, and I'm like, you guys, I'm free. All of our gear had failed. Like, we were soaked to the bone. It was 30 something degrees.
Oh my gosh.
My lips were blue, and we were just like miserable. And so we went to that house, and we were like, what are we gonna do? So we were like, let's go knock on the door and see if we can on the porch so we could call Charlotte. Charlotte was our trail angel, and she was transferring us, shuttling us from the end to the beginning to the end and whatnot on that trip. And so let's call Charlotte and see if she'll pick us up. And she has those Airbnbs. I was like, maybe we'll just go stay in the Airbnb until the rain lets up, and then we can start again tomorrow. Well, we got to the porch, we're knocking, no one's home. We call Charlotte. She's like, yeah, I'm going to be like an hour because she was going to pick someone else up. And she's like, you can definitely stay in the trailer tonight. We're like, cool. Meanwhile, we're sitting there freezing. So TMI, but we all like.
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.